For oral answer. I call on Government Order of the Day number 1.
Appropriation 2011-12 Estimates Bill. Interrupted debate on second reading and the amendment proposed thereto.
When the debate was interrupted, Charles Chauvel was speaking. He has 7 minutes and 50 seconds remaining to speak should he wish to take it. Charles Chauvel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When the bell rang last night interrupting the debate, I was talking about the proposal in the budget to privatise the power companies, Meridian, Genesis, Mighty River Power, and also to sell the stake in Air New Zealand. And I was setting out why we thought this was such a short-sighted policy. And Sarah, I listened very carefully and with interest to the interchange between the finance spokesperson on this side of the House and the Minister of Finance during question time, where the Minister was trying to make some sort of case that the special dividends from Meridian Energy paid as a result of selling assets that Meridian had acquired in Australia should be excluded from the valuation, and that somehow this made it all sensible to sell off strategic stakes in the power companies. Well, Sarah, I want to just say this to the Minister of Finance. It is ordinary business practice, as he should know as a shareholding minister, for those energy companies to be buying and selling assets overseas all the time. If he knew the portfolio well, he would know that Mighty River, for example, has significant geothermal assets at the moment that they are working on overseas. There's a joint venture in Chile, there's some work being done in the United States. Nobody expects Mighty River Power to hold on to those assets overseas long term. Everybody knows that Mighty River Power's core business is developing renewable energy in New Zealand, as we've seen with their announcement yesterday of a very significant geothermal plant in the North Island that will take their geothermal production up to significant levels and also make that manner of renewable production a very significant part of the energy mix in New Zealand. So it's wrong to say that somehow you should take their overseas activities out of the mix when calculating their rate of return to the Crown. It's simply misguided, and it shows a further flaw in the thinking that somehow selling a majority stake in our important and profitable power companies and the stake of around 80% in Air New Zealand is somehow good for the country. Just on the case of Meridian, sir, the Australian business that the Minister referred to was one that the company purchased when I was on the board and sold when I was on the board. That resulted in nearly $1 billion worth of value for New Zealand taxpayers, accrued no risk to New Zealand taxpayers. While the business was being held in Australia, it meant that we got scale when we were trying to build wind in both New Zealand and Australia. But it meant that we could sell that activity at a profit in an overseas market that had no effect on New Zealand taxpayers at all, except to make sure that they got nearly $1 billion worth of extra revenue in the kitty. Now, sir, that not only is a good deal and a good example of a business doing something successful in Australia, which unfortunately for New Zealand businesses is not always the case, but it also shows the lie inherent in the Minister's thinking that somehow you should exclude special dividends from the equation when you're looking at the rate of return from state-owned enterprises. The fact is, under Labor, there were frequent special dividends. There are still special dividends paid by the state-owned enterprises under this government. He knows that, and trying to cook the books and trying to avoid the $500 million that this government got in special dividends only this year from the state-owned enterprises, in respect of which he would sell a stake, once gone, gone forever, is just absolute folly, sir. I want to talk a bit about what selling the rest of our power companies would mean in practice. I remember when I was on the board at Meridian, and that board, I have to say, was a very, very good board. I learnt a lot from the businessmen and women who sat on that board and who exercised excellent governance skills in the company when I was there. I think the directors' fees were $50,000 a year. At Contact, which ran a business of a similar size and a broadly similar balanced portfolio of hydro and other generation activities, because they'd all inherited the old ECNZ setup, the directors' fees in total in 2010 were nearly, they were $993,000 for doing the same job that SOE directors do for a fraction of the cost. Now, that's another thing that will happen if these SOEs are sold off, if these power companies are sold off. The reality is it will cost a lot more to run them, because the private sector, which will have a significant stake in them, will demand a lot more to participate in governance and probably in management. You see this repeated all the way through: overhead, executive pay, and the general approach to the way in which the business is run. No one should presume that we would have the amount of renewable energy that we've got in New Zealand, or indeed that we would have acquired the additional generation capacity and the efficiencies in generation that we have acquired over the last 10 years if most of the system hadn't been state-owned. Because most of those directors sit there every day, they know that the government thinks that it's in the general national interest, that there should be more and better generation capacity, that it should generally be renewable. They know that's what the people want, they know it's generally what the government wants, and they sometimes take what I'll say is more than a commercial approach to make that happen. Well, that's a good thing. We should be pleased that our power companies do that, and that they try their best to keep a lid on power price rises. If this proposal goes through, and if majority stakes are sold, or even significant minority stakes are sold in Mighty River, in Genesis, in Meridian, then we will undoubtedly see attempts to put power prices up significantly. And indeed, if you look at the budget document, so you can see that the government has calculated a higher rate of return on that very assumption once the sale has occurred. So the experience with energy privatisation overseas, particularly in the United Kingdom, is you do just get higher prices, you do just get greater extravagance, and of course you lose forever the dividend flow that we currently benefit from. So it's a foolish policy. It's what this budget absolutely relies upon in order to make the figures work, and it's something that we should not do at any cost.
Honourable Tim Gross.